welcome to this month's series, conversation series here in Bronzeville. I wanted to make note that this month is the last month that, or I should say, beginning next month, June, July, and August, we will meet for the first 15-20 minutes at our normal location, and then we'll begin having history walking tours, where it will be led by Mayor Willis Brown and myself. So please share with your friends and family. We do recognize that history is one of the roots to preserving our history or our story, and it also avoids gentrification from going wrong. And we do know that the mural that's on Long and Champion, and the reason why we started having these conversations is an element of gentrification going wrong. We do understand that, right?
I know that.
So this is why we have these monthly conversations, so that we can understand how it is the community can continue to engage as well as continue to grow regarding elements that we know is important in our community. What I want to also state is that the value of learning our history is not only the role of other communities, but it primarily is our role that lives within the community. When something is happening to our next door neighbor's home, and we know the history of that house, we can help preserve it. We can help share the stories. So it's so important that we understand the value of sharing stories as well as African American history within our community. So let me share a little bit for those of you that don't know. My name is Rita Fuller Yates, and I'm the visionary over the Columbus Black History page on Facebook, as well as the Columbus Black News group on Facebook, and the TV show that airs every Sunday at 5 o'clock. Today is our new season, season 6. So I'm so excited. We actually are live right now. Say hello to everyone. Again, Columbus Black News is a resource that allows for you to know what's going on in the community, primarily communities like Bronzeville. It's a resource. Does everyone remember the Call-in Post? Who remembers the Call-in Post? See, I grew up here in the 70s and the 80s, and the Call-in Post was a resource that was promised to me as an African American, that told stories about me, that made life about what was going on in my everyday life. And that's what Columbus Black News is all about. So please continue to tune in for the next 6 weeks, because that's where the sources of what we're talking about in our communities will be aired at, on Facebook, again, Columbus Black News. We're also the visionary over Breathe. And Breathe is the organization, it's a nonprofit organization that allows for us to have these conversations along with Bronzeville, and allows for us to be a part of tough conversations. We do know as an African American community, some of the challenges that we have is centered around us not being able to communicate what it is that we are challenged with. And we are a nonprofit organization that centers and creates that pillar to make those conversations just a little bit easier. So I was asked today to share a little bit about the history of Bronzeville. And as a historian, I like to do more of storytelling and share from my own perspective versus about facts and dates and how many people was on the bus and all of that. I'll tell you a little bit. I grew up at 1261 East Long Street, which is right across the street from the firehouse today. It is now a golden colored house, but when I lived there it was pink. And on the side of the house it still is pink. They didn't finish it. So history still remains, and I'm the person that can tell you that story, that my grandfather was the one that painted that house. So when I talk about the history of Bronzeville, I tell it from my own perspective. And when I'm sharing stories about transportation, I talk about it more or less not as a priority or as a benefit. I talk about it definitely in the 70s and 80s where it was a necessity. I grew up at a time where families didn't have cars. All families didn't have automobiles. And oftentimes you were required to take public transportation to school or even to your jobs. When I was in college, I was given the opportunity to work at Nationwide, and I didn't have a vehicle. So with that opportunity, of course, you had to get to work, right? So public transportation was that means, and I was so excited that that opportunity was given to me, because the bus stop was literally across the street from where I lived, and the bus would stop right in front of Nationwide. So without that public transportation, it would have been challenging for me to have been given that opportunity. So I think it's important for us to constantly have these conversations, not only about public transportation, but about safety. I know the value of having safety in our community only because me being a part of the community and having public transportation is such a need, and not only a priority, but definitely a necessity, especially as more diversity moves into the community, more handicap challenged individuals, elderly people. We need to be able to provide them with the best form of safety and the best form of transportation to ensure connection and community, our community is safe. So without further ado, I know we have a couple of things to do today. We have people here from Bronzeville, Mount Vernon Avenue, who's going to talk about the safety of transportation in the community. But first I want to introduce you to our mayor here in Bronzeville. A couple of days ago we talked about what it means to own our history, to own our community. And one of the first things it starts with is owning our leadership. Do we understand the value of knowing who our leaders are? Do we understand that? See, without understanding who our leaders are, it's very difficult to understand where the direction of information needs to come from. So it's so important for you to value Mayor Willis Brown, who's here to share information with us to ensure that we're consistent and that we're all on one accord. So having a leadership, understanding who our leadership is, the value to growth in our community. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you, again, we will state that he is our mayor. We will state that the leadership in this community is important, and we will continue to give homage to an individual who continues to work on our behalf. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our mayor, Willis Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here, and as you spend the time here working hard with the Bronzeville Neighborhood Association, you know, over the years, myself and the Vice President of the Bronzeville Neighborhood Association, Dana Mason, he's here. He'll speak later. He has something to add to what we're talking about, which he probably does. But we're here as looking at the impact of transportation on the neighborhood. And before I get started into that, we're going to have a brief presentation, then we're going to turn it over to the group that is dealing with the corridor of Mount Vernon and to slow traffic down, enhance the neighborhood. Next month, we'll be at our old location, which is at Champion and Long Street. So, you know, we're here, we moved around, so which is nice. We spent a lot of time doing things in the neighborhood to enhance it, myself and others. But for those who are not familiar with the Bronzeville neighborhood, its boundaries are Broad Street to the south, I-670 to the north, Taylor Avenue to the west, to the east, and Jefferson Avenue to the west, well, about 1 square mile. And you know, we have about 10,000 people living here. At one point, this area had over 70,000. So with that number of people in the past, I'm talking the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, the area transportation was pivotal. And as I would just give a brief scenario how important transportation is, and also how important the mobility of transportation, whether you're walking, riding a bike, or driving. It's important to the neighborhood, especially as it has gone through a transition to where it is today. One of the important points of transportation is you talk about from the 1900s to the 1940s. 1900s, African Americans lived mainly near downtown because everyone, as Mrs. Fuller Yates stated, a lot of people didn't have cars. And whether they're African American, Irish, German, cars were a rarity. And they were in the neighborhood, but not as plentiful. So in order for people to get around, you had to have transportation. Either you walked, or you used your bike, and or if someone in the family or someone you knew had a car, then you got a ride. But mass transportation was pivotal. And I'm from Harlem, so we had transportation on every corner, buses on top and trains below. And it was designed for a walkable community. Even though we had transportation, the sidewalks were large, the corners were lighting so that you can get across. So here in Columbus, we had that. In Bronzeville especially, we had bus transportation. The old trolleys used to run up and down, because why? People lived here, but they had to be close to their work, whether it's working downtown or working in the Bexley area as a domestic or doing other kind of service job. You had to be close. Not too far from here was the stockyards, so people lived here so they can get to work. Again, in the 1920s and 30s, things start to get a little bit better. Then you had the Depression, so people were really depending on mass transportation, the buses, the trolleys, and not those walking. So therefore you had to have safe streets. Traffic wasn't moving as fast as it's moving today. But then after the war, the Second World War, people had more money. So people start coming back and buying cars, and you got the increase from the 1940s up until after the 1980s. You had a large increase in cars, and the neighborhood had more people. So you had the ability to get around, and it still had the bus routes. We had a lot of bus services in this area. People were able to stay connected to their families, to other communities by using the bus service, which was available on almost every major Mount Vernon, Long, Broad, and so people can get around and go visit or go shopping. I'm not going on the bus. From the 1980s until now, there was a great migration, as I say, black flight, whatever you want to call it. A lot of us left the area, and as a result of that, CODA spent a lot of time trying to reassess how they should, keep these lines going. And again, the key here is population. If your neighbor doesn't have population, then the bus services are going to be reduced. And we fought that even as a commissioner, fighting that battle of trying to get CODA to keep the lines here, but they cut a few lines. But what we told them, that the neighborhood is in transition and it will come back. Because why it will come back? Because Bronzeville is the heart of the city, one of the arteries of the city. We have everything. You can look right here and see downtown. We have a lot of access to the interstate. So we said it's just a matter of time before it becomes repopulated. And the time is now. So in telling them that, as a result, we're now having an increase in population. We now have CODA having to relook at their bus lines that they removed. We have to have buses going. I know some people that are talking about going on the bus. In order to go to Livingston, they have to go downtown and then get a connector. They have to do more of that, having crosstown buses. So we are looking forward to that. But besides the mass transit, we have a problem right here. This has become a speedway because one of the wide roads, of course, the number of cars, and people are using the Mount Vernon area because, again, you don't have the cars parked on the side slowing the traffic down because they don't have as many businesses. But now Mount Vernon has become a raceway, same way as Atchison. And people are complaining all the time. So the city is working with the group to do some market assessments to kind of get a feel of what is needed. We know what's needed to slow it down. When they put Poindexter in, they removed the traffic light that was here for 100 years. Well, I mean, it's been a while. And as a result of that, we had no fatalities yet, but there's plenty of accidents that happened. One that even ran into one of the buildings, that the new Poindexter building that was put up. Yesterday, I was handing out flyers, and I parked my car here and walked towards Taylor. By the time I got to Taylor and back, I watched an accident happen here yesterday. And it's because of this intersection. One is not a four-way stop. People are coming down, people are not noticing, and as a result you have many accidents. We are trying to get this redone. We want to slow the traffic down. We want to enhance the beautification of Mount Vernon because it's a main corridor in the Bronzeville neighborhood. We want it to look beautiful. We want it to be safe. And now that we have the neighborhood being repopulated, it needs to have where people on their bicycles can feel safe riding down Mount Vernon or going anywhere in the neighborhood. So we welcome the fact that they're doing a study and they're trying to get input to do different things, but what we want in Bronzeville is not a lot of studying, we want the action. So what we really want is that between now and the fall, we have to have something out here that is physically in place, even if it's temporary, to begin to change the mindset of Mount Vernon. It is not a raceway. And this way we need to get them to implement. And if it's one thing that we want the city to do is to make sure that the dollars are there to put something here to slow down at each of the intersections, to put out different kind of devices that can slow the traffic. And they have done some things, and they have engineers that will, you know, when they get to speak shortly, they can tell about some of these things. But we have to be forthright and put the pressure to say we need that, because we shouldn't have to wait till we go to the funeral of someone that will be killed here. It's just a matter of time if we don't do something to slow it down. So what I'm, instead of to continue, you know, this raceway, but also that even though the neighborhood is changing, we have to make it a walkable community like it once was, a safe community, and one that people want to walk to another part of the neighborhood and walk to Mount Vernon, to the commercial retail outlets here. So what we will do is continue to work with the group and hope that the city will put something in place sooner than later, because we've been studied and studied and studied again. We've had enough of that. We need action to change it, and we have ideas, they have some ideas, and we want people to recognize that and support that effort. And also call your city council members and tell them that you support this effort to do something about Mount Vernon's beautification and mobility. And I'm going to stop with that, because they have a whole lot that they've been working on that we want them to share with you and others. And if you have any questions, I don't know if Mr. Mason has anything. Okay, and we're going to have Mr. Mason say a few words, and then we're going to turn it over to them. So today is a short one, but next time we speak with the tours, you get a history. So if you are free next month, please, you'll get information from the website and from us. And if you can come, we have a lot to tell next month about this neighborhood and the history about this neighborhood. So again, we look forward to seeing you next month and taking a walk with us in our effort to educate people and expose them to the richness of Bronzeville. Like we said, it's not for everyone. It's only for those who want to be a part of something great. And that's our motto for Bronzeville. Thank you.
Is that the third Sunday in June?
Yes, it'll be the third. It'll be the third Sunday in June. At 2 o'clock at the Long and Champion.
Going back home?
Yes, going back home, right behind the Chase Manhattan Bank. We'll be right there. Yes. Okay, Mr. Mason.
Hello, Bronzevillians. My name is Dana Masoner, Vice President of the Bronzeville Neighborhood Association. And as we said last week, with this neighborhood, it's back to the future. It was back to the future with housing, with business, also with transportation. We in this community always had transportation since the 1880s, whether it was trolleys, buses, taxis, you name it. We had it until 2010. That's when CODA and various powers to be with the city decided they needed to disperse transportation abilities throughout the city, and we were decimated. The Near East Side lost so much. We used to have stops on almost every other corner on Long Street, many on Mount Vernon. We said people were moving back to the neighborhood. Many of these people, millennials and others, retirees who don't have cars, they want to use the transportation system like it historically has been used, being able to walk from their house one block to catch a bus. So here we are again, and we're asking the city, and they're helping us now with this study on Mount Vernon, but we want what we always had, transportation. We want to have our neighborhood a walkable neighborhood. So with that, let the city people who are going to explain and edify us on what they want to do. Thank you.
Yeah, you're going to have the city go ahead and speak. Very good. Thank you.
Oh, hi everyone. Thanks for being here today. Yeah, I just want to thank Willis and Rita for having us today and letting us take some time to talk about our transportation study. So I'm Emma Coggy, work for the City of Columbus. I'm a transportation planner. We've been looking at the Mount Vernon Avenue corridor since last fall. We've done a lot of data collection. You may have seen our public survey, getting some more information from the community. And you can see too our infographic of the survey data that a lot of people want to walk and bike, and we did find too that in the Bronzeville neighborhood there are a lot of people who don't have cars, so maybe walking and biking and taking the bus are some of the only options. So we really want to focus on making that safer and have more mobility options in the future. So we're hoping to wrap up our study this summer, and we want to look at concepts that are going to slow traffic down, address this intersection in particular, but also look at all the other intersections along Mount Vernon and just change the character of the roadway so it's safer for all of the roadway users. So hopefully with your feedback, we just want to talk to everyone, get more information on kind of what you want to see in the corridor, if you want to have more walking or biking facilities or better bus stops, where you want to see changes basically, as we have some ideas, but we want to make sure it'll work here. And we want to pilot some of those ideas too before we put them in permanently. So I hope that you can share some more information with us. We've got our map here for specific locations, and then just kind of how you want to move better on Mount Vernon. So yeah, thank you again, and just let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'd be happy to take them. Sure.
You're right now, you're sitting at one of the most pivotal, it's two very important intersections. You got Mount Vernon at 20 and Mount Vernon. These are very, because of all the development here, you got all these cars, all these people. You can see it right now. It doesn't take a rocket science to understand.
Calvin, can I have you come up to the mic?
No, but I'm just talking here. But do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Just look at it. Just look at it on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, I know, yeah.
It's just, and then what happens is this intersection, watch the number of people that just go through. That guy just flew through just now.
Yeah,
and it's impacting kids, older adults. It's just like a raceway. So you're saying you're putting it off to the future. Something needs to be done to address this now.
Yeah, we're actually going to look at some short-term projects, so that would be one of our things that we address immediately, but we also just, if we can slow down the traffic too, that will impact that intersection and just make everything work a little better. But yeah, you're right. And we want to have a plan for the future too, for some of the longer-term projects that may take a bit longer. So we'll have kind of a phased approach.
I have a question.
Sure.
So for those of you that have comments or concerns or want to ask a question, this is the time to get involved, get engaged. This is a time to share your story or have a voice. So please you can come beside me and ask your question. But I guess my question is, in the city of downtown, there is C-buses, and there is short ways for the community to use transportation within the community. Is there any plan for us to have something like this in Bronzeville?
That I don't know about at the moment, and that might be more of like a conversation with CODA, but that's a great idea, kind of like micro-mobility, especially with people maybe who don't have cars here. But no, that's something we can definitely look into. Did you have a question?
Why did CODA mess up the schedule right there?
Can you grab the mic for me real quick? You may have a good question that everybody else wants to hear.
Why did CODA mess up that schedule? It takes forever for a bus to come down Mount Vernon Avenue.
I'm not sure on CODA's schedule, but I know they are starting to make different changes, so that one I'm not sure of. I'm
You
sorry about
wait
that.
forever for a bus out
Yeah,
there.
that's not.
They used to didn't have that problem. You used to come every 15 minutes. You had them old people out there waiting on them buses and they thought to fall over.
Right, and that's definitely an issue I think they should be looking into. And I know that's kind of what Dana was saying too about taking out of some of the higher frequency lines.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can come over more.
Hello, so I'm new to the community. I've been here for about a year, and this strip is my daily course to work. I live right across 670, or I work right across 670, but I live here on Long. And for the past year that I've been here, and I just want to hammer home what everybody else has already been saying, I think I could say with a pretty decent amount of certainty that once a week there's an accident right here, right? Sometimes more than that. To the point where it's, sometimes I'll change my route based on the time of day. And living 5 minutes drive away, I really should be riding my bike, and I would love to ride my bike, but there's just no way I could do it knowing how this intersection works. So I just wanted to give my +1 to the vocalization of we need to do something now, today, to the point where I would even volunteer my time in association with the neighborhood association. If we could just come out here and in some way ourselves police this corner in the interim, I would be willing to donate time for that. So that's my vote, or my charge to the community. Whatever we could do to make a change immediately, because one day could be the difference between somebody living and dying. And as you said earlier, there was, that corner apartment was struck by a vehicle from this intersection. So just wanted to give my +1 on that, and thank you for the work you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. That's exactly what we want to hear too. Kind of how you want to use the corridor, and we would like to do some sort of pilot project there to address that intersection immediately too. So Donna.
Thank you, Emma. So right now, I hear everyone, first of all, my name is Donna Marbury. I'm with the Warhol and Wall Street Marketing Agency, and we've been working with the city and a couple of other firms to make sure we're capturing all of the information from the community and what you need along the Mount Vernon corridor. So as you see, we did a survey for a couple of months. Got about 130 people who responded. If you've seen those big banners kind of posted, it was in February, it was snowy, but everyone who did surveys online, and we had some printed ones, we were able to capture that information. I want you to spend some time just looking through, and it kind of echoes everything that you've been saying today. We have 93% of people surveyed saying that they drive their car, but more than half saying they want to bike and walk more. We definitely understand this intersection, and we hear that over and over again that there's some changes need to be made. So I don't want to speak for Emma, but I would say that's probably a top priority, a concern. But, positively, we know that this community is steeped in history, and people are proud to live here. People have lived here for generations, and they want to bring back that walkable, hospitable neighborhood that once was and it still is, but make it safer for all modes of transportation. There was a really great gentleman here that said he has a unicycle that he rides up and down the street. And someone like that who prefers a bicycle or a unicycle, we want to make sure that he is safe and he's protected and he can get around this community in the way that he wants to. We've done a lot of talking. So right now, what we want you to do, we have a couple of activities that we can further get your information about what's needed, not just here, but along the whole Mount Vernon corridor. So one of those is a kind of bubble. We want you to answer the question of blank would help you get around the community better. And that could be anything from sidewalks, crosswalks, etc. You know your community best, so please let us know. You can write either with a dry erase marker or a Postit note. And then this other is a map of the whole corridor. What we have some stickers and some Postit notes as well, where you can put specifically the part of the corridor that you feel needs the most attention. And if you want to write a Post-it and tell us what could be used to make it a better experience, please do so. I'm here as well as Emma and Catherine Gervs. Hey, Catherine. And Kevin, and we're part of the project team who's putting all of these concepts together so that change can happen as soon as possible. So feel free to ask us questions. Like I said, I'm with public engagement, so there may not be things I can specifically answer, but our engineers and project team know all of the weeds and the details of what can happen and what's in the works. So, yes.
Blueprint for Pat had a blueprint. Have you seen that blueprint?
Yes.
Now, when it comes to this specific intersection, there are specific plans. Now, one of the things that was not accomplished in that blueprint, and believe it or not, it's very important, traffic control impacts safety. This corridor between here and Long Street, you'd be surprised how many people frequent just this course. And it's a lot of comment. You got the senior development, you got the big, it's really grown like that. That's an indication of people not even respecting the neighborhood. Because anything could happen. The kids playing, you know, it only takes a second.
Right.
It only takes a second. Look at that blueprint. Look at the demographics. There are figures that was revealed in that blueprint. If you just look at the data, that's already there. You don't need no new data. Just look at the data that's already there.
Well, you know, I believe that has been a part of the study process now. But, you know, you're here today, you have a specific opinion, you know a lot, I'm hearing all the questions and feedback you have. So I want to make sure your voice is captured. You know, we have numbers all day, but it's not the same as having a voice of the community. So we want to pair those all together so that we can make sure we're hearing everything. So with that, I think, you know, I'm ready to jump in and get some feedback from you all and answer questions. We'll be standing over here and helping out, and we can talk through the survey results as well. So
can everyone invite everyone over here?
yeah, so we can all move this way and you know, grab a marker, get a Post-it note, and all of this great feedback and information you have. Let's get that on our banners so we can use that for our study as well. Corridor, so please come and take a sticker. We have Post-it notes, and please let us know, are there specific points along the corridor that you have suggestions, recommendations on how we can move forward and make it safer? And then also on this side, you can add your comment with a marker or sticky note as well of things that would help you get around the community better.
Speaking of champion, one of the things that the city and we in the neighborhood have to be aware of is Champion is a major citywide south to north, north to south corridor. It's the only corridor that goes completely through our neighborhood. It goes from way down below Rebus, way north above 5th. So we have traffic from all over the city, other neighborhoods that are using this as a shortcut to avoid freeways. There are very few traffic lights. So the Champion corridor from south to north has to be thought of that way. So when the city considers that, that may give them a clue on what to do with this particular intersection. But The reason why it's compounded at this intersection is when you go 35 from down below Phoebus and you can go all the way north, this is just a bump in the road. Unfortunately, those of us that live in the neighborhood that cross Mount Vernon the other direction get the bumps. All right, thank you.